Do you really want to know what was in the Ark of God? Welcome to the Daily Devo. I am Vince Miller. This week we have been reading through 1 Samuel chapter 6. I titled this chapter From Confusion to Clarity. So in chapter 6, the Ark of God is taken, then returned. The priests offer a sacrifice upon the great rock, but then they make a fatal mistake. In verse 19, it reads, "And he," that is God, "struck some of the men of Beth-shemesh," in other words, he killed them, "because they looked upon," or into, "the ark of the Lord. He struck 70 men of them, and the people mourned, because the Lord had struck the people with such a great blow." We are curious beings, aren't we? I have been curious ever since I was in my teens. I remember as a young teen taking things apart just to see inside of them so I could understand how they worked. But as I've grown older and maybe a tiny bit wiser, I have learned that there are lines and limits to all curiosity. Sometimes curiosity can be good with a positive payoff, and other times it can be bad, bringing with it severe consequences. And in our relationship with God, I think it's really good to be curious about Him and His will. Yet, we got to tread lightly and carefully, because sometimes our curiosity can become selfish and lead to selfish thoughts and attitudes and actions. God sets boundaries that should never be crossed. And when we defy these boundaries, we distance ourselves from Him because we put ourselves outside of His will and in contest with His will. And we are going to face consequences if that is the case. So here's the big question of the text. Why did these 70 priests of God dare to peek into the ark? I mean, these guys knew better. They were explicitly instructed never to touch, open, or even look inside. I mean, that was basic priestly training, 101. I mean, it's like the first class you took in seminary back when they were younger. But I think their curiosity may have stemmed from an eagerness to see if the Philistines took anything from the ark, or perhaps it was their first chance to see it outside of the tabernacle. Therefore, they thought the rules didn't apply. Whatever the reason, their disobedience cost them their lives. So are you curious? Do you want to know what was in the Ark of God? I know you do. Come on. According to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 4, there were 3 objects in the great box. Number 1, the tablets of stone given to Moses by God, upon which God with His finger wrote the 10 Commandments. Number 2, Aaron's rod. This was a stick that belonged to Aaron, who was the high priest of Israel. And third, a jar of manna. This was the bread that God provided for the Israelites when they were wandering in the desert. 3 objects representing the rule, protection, and provision of God. You know, fellas, God sets boundaries that apply to all creation. Everyone is included. No one is excluded. Even insiders are not excluded. We cannot defy the will of God. Believers cannot. Recent events involving prominent spiritual leaders that you know prove this point well. Just take James MacDonald, Ravi Zacharias, Bill Hybels, or the latest tragedy, Tony Evans. Each of these instances are heartbreaking, but they are strong reminders. Curiosity within God's will is safe and beneficial. But if we get beyond it, there lies danger. So, be curious in your spiritual life. But don't be tempted to step outside of the will of God. No man can live outside of the will of God, literally and figuratively. I love you guys. I pray this has blessed you. If it has, share it with someone else. And I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.